Hit it, hit it.
And welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to make the Xanadu pullover. This is a free pattern available over at redheart.com. If you click over there at that link though, you can get the pattern right now and download it and follow along with me. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the pattern. I'm not actually going to crochet with you, but I'm going to talk to you about the instructions so that you can better understand why you're doing what you're doing. Maybe you've never made a sweater before and you aren't exactly sure what it is when it says to start decreasing for the armholes, or how far you need to go to make sure that the armhole depth is correct, or maybe you don't understand how the shape of a sleeve is constructed. I'm going to walk you through all of that. The greatest thing about this is the Xanadu pullover is actually my pattern. So I wrote this pattern, I knit or I crocheted the actual sample from start to finish. So when it comes to questions about this sweater, I'm able to answer them. And if there's any tips and tricks that I can give to you throughout this whole video, I'm going to do that because I definitely know all of them. If we look down here to the hand cam, you can see that here is a sweater. It's a finished Xanadu sweater, and this is exactly like the finished sample that I did for the original over on Red Heart. The only difference between this one is, one, it's the size, because it's the larger size, but this one also does not have the ribbing on the bottom. And the reason is my best friend Jenny crocheted this one for her. She made this one for herself, and she decided that she didn't want the ribbing, so she added some extra inches to the length of the body and made it perfect to fit her. She wears this quite a bit actually and gets lots of compliments on them. One of the great things about having a finished sample here to look at is that we can kind of see the construction of the piece. You can see very easily, if I kind of pull this up a little bit, let's make sure we're not completely out of frame. All right. So the front and the back is just two simple pieces, a front and a back, and then there's two sleeves. When we have the two sleeves, they are set-in sleeves, meaning they are not made attached to the body. They're made separately and then they're sewn into place. The shoulders are also made separately and they're sewn into place as well. The great thing about this not having any sort of ribbing on the bottom, you can see there, is that it lays really beautifully on her body without any sort of sucking in a little bit. But the cool part about the ribbing I chose for this pattern is that it doesn't cinch in and make it look like, you're a stuffed sausage. It actually is supposed to lay across your body very nice and flattering, and it's a very thick ribbing. So if you choose to do the ribbing, I think that's a great choice if that's the type of sweater you want to make. What's the point of making a sweater if you can't make it the way you want it to be, right? So if there are little tweaks that you want to make to the sweater, to the Xanadu pullover, you absolutely can do that. Whether it's removing the ribbing, whether it's, maybe putting a scallop edge around the trim of the sleeves, maybe you want to do some sort of a collar along the neckline of the sweater. You could do anything you want, okay? So you can really make this sweater your own. But let me walk you through the pattern a little bit and describe some of the things that you're going to encounter in this pattern and maybe walk you through them, all right? So let's go ahead and move on to that step. Okay, so you're ready to get started on your sweater, but the first thing you should always do when you begin any sweater pattern is take a look at your pattern. If you haven't downloaded the pattern yet, please click on that link right there and download your copy of the Xanadu pullover, and let's take a look at it, okay? The reason you want to look at a pattern before you begin is because you want to see if there are any sort of hiccups maybe in the pattern. Maybe you don't know how to do a particular stitch, or you don't understand a certain technique that's being used. You want to make sure you catch that before it's time for you to implement that particular stitch or technique. Also, looking at the pattern before you begin, especially a sweater pattern that has different sizes, you're able to go through and highlight or circle all the numbers that pertain to your size. Meaning when we go through this pattern, you can see at the very beginning when it says skill level intermediate, sizes, it has small and in parentheses, medium, large, extra large, 2X, and 3X. You might not know exactly what size to make for you, and so you can go to the one where it says the finished bust measurements. That's going to give you a lot more information than just the generic small through 3X, right? So the thing there is that you can look at the finished bust measurements and see exactly what those finished measurements are of the sweater. So you can take your own bust measurements and then look at the finished bust measurements of the sweater and make those coincide with one another. I can tell you from experience that it is better if this particular sweater fits a little bit closer to the bust rather than loose. So for myself, I'm a large busted lady and I would have to make the 2X, which is perfect because that would give me a nice close fit of the sweater to my bust. It would actually fit much nicer and make you look much thinner the closer this sweater is to your body. The reason that's the case is because this is a bulkier yarn. This is a yarn called Boutique Treasures, and it is a bulky weight yarn. It's an acrylic wool blend. Beautiful yarn, but it is gonna add a little bit of thickness to your body. So the tighter this fabric is to your body, the better it is overall, okay? So we've chosen our finished bust measurements, okay? So for me, it would be a 2X. So I'm gonna continue on through this discussion as if it was a 2X, okay? So if I were making this for me, I would get a highlighter because I prefer highlighters to do this, and I would highlight the 2X. And then I would highlight the one that says finished bust measurement and it has 48 inches. I would highlight that. Now I can see on my pattern that that size is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers within the parentheses. So that means whenever I come to a problem in the pattern where it gives me a list of numbers, where it's a number and then a parentheses with numbers in it, the 5th number in those parentheses are going to pertain to me and my size that I want to do. So having this pattern printed out for yourself to be able to highlight like that is really important here at the beginning, because you can go through and whenever you find a section of the pattern where it says for sizes 2X, you want to do XYZ, you can highlight that section just for you. This is also a great way for you to be able to take little notes and take clues that if you're making something where maybe it says do blah, 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 but at the same time do blah, 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 you already know that this is a 2-part of the equation of what you need to do, instead of doing something silly like I've done in the past, where you read so far as, okay, do blah, 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 but you forget to read the at the same time, you know what I mean? So you can stay ahead of the game that way by reading ahead of the pattern and following along that way. If I follow along the pattern, I can see that I see my list of materials. Again, I used Red Heart Boutique Treasures, which is a 70% acrylic, 30% wool from Red Heart. And I used a size J crochet hook, both of which can be found in the materials list over at redheart.com when you get this pattern. You can order it directly from Red Heart. So if your local store doesn't carry Boutique Treasures, no worries, you can have it delivered directly to your house, which is just primo, primo, primo. Then you get to a little information that says gauge. What is gauge? Gauge is a funny little thing that happens when you are dealing with any sort of knitting or crochet item. Whether it's a sweater, a blanket, or a doily, or whatever it may be, gauge is important. Gauge is it's telling you what the measurement of those stitches are according to the designer. So for me as a designer, I can tell you that I got 12 stitches and 12 rows in the griddle stitch pattern that equaled 4 inches. Now, if you followed along in my YouTube videos here, you know that the griddle stitch can sometimes be called the wattle stitch, or it can sometimes be called the single double, and it is actually one of my favorite stitches. All it is a combination of single crochets and double crochets for one row. And then the next row, you single crochet on top of the doubles and you double crochet on top of the singles. If you want instructions on how to do the single double crochet stitch, you can check out the video for that. There's a link right there, so that way you don't have to go searching for it. And you can get a little input on how to do the single double crochet, which is also called the griddle stitch pattern. When I used this yarn and the size J crochet hook to make this sweater, I got 12 stitches and 12 rows to equal 4 inches. If you get 12 stitches and 12 rows with the size J crochet hook and the Boutique Treasures yarn, and that equals 4 inches, you're good to go. All the numbers that are in this pattern will work specifically for you. If you're getting more stitches per inch, that means your stitches are too tight, so you need to go up in a hook size. Don't think that just because I used a J hook that you have to use a J hook. That's not the case. You can go up, you can go down. The important thing for you to know is that you need to get the gauge that works for the hook you're going to use, okay? So you need to make sure you get that 12 stitches and 12 rows. I don't care what size hook you use to get it. Just get that, okay? That's one of the first things you've got to make sure you do, okay? If we carry on the pattern, you can see that there's a section for special stitches, and you'll see any sort of stitch there. Maybe there's something there that you don't know how to do. Don't worry, I have videos all about all of these stitches here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel, so you can check out all that information. So if you need to know how to do a chain, a half double crochet, single crochet, double crochet two together, or single crochet two together, you don't have to look any further than right here. Everything's available. Further on, it goes into exactly what the griddle stitch is according to what I wrote in there. And so it gives you the setup for that. Totally easy. As I said, it's a combination of singles and doubles, and then doubles on top of the singles and singles on top of the doubles. Now we're getting into the meat of the pattern. Are you ready? As we look into this part of the pattern, it says in big letters pattern, and then it says for the back, and it gives you a chain amount. Now this is the first example that we've come across in the pattern here at the very beginning when we get multiple numbers. So we have that number 44, and in parentheses we have a whole bunch of other numbers divided by commas, okay? Remember, if I'm looking at the 2x size, I want to look at the 5th number in those parentheses. So for me, I would go to the parentheses and I would say, okay, so not the first, not the second, not the third, not the fourth, but the 5th number there. So number 74, that's my number. I would highlight it. Now I know, okay, I need to make sure that I chain 74 chains. Now, another good point about doing that is that when I set this down and go walk away and, work on a bunch of different things for a couple days, couple weeks, couple months, who am I kidding? Sometimes it takes us a couple years. And I come back to this pattern and I'm like, what size did I make? I can pull out my pattern and I can see where I highlighted, oh, look, I did 74 chains for the back of my sweater, and when I get to the front, it says I'm supposed to do exactly that I did on the back. Great, I can make that one 74 as well. So it's a great way for you to keep track that way as well. You can carry on, and it says you're going to work in the griddle stitch pattern, and it gives you the number of stitches that you're going to have. And then it says work until the back measures 13 inches on the wrong side row. So you're going to work the back all the way up, going back and forth, doing the griddle stitch until it measures 13 inches. Now this is where you can really customize how long you want your sweater to be. If you decide, you know what, Marley, 13 inches plus the big ribbing, that's going to be a little bit too long for me. I'm going to make this body portion 5 inches. You can totally do that. You can absolutely do that, and I encourage you to do that. You want to make this sweater fit you, right? So go ahead, maybe you only work it up 5 inches and you jump into the armholes. That's great. Remember to put a note on your pattern though that you did that so that you can remember to do that on the front as well, okay? So you can absolutely adjust the length that I've used here and you make that your own, okay? So that's the body of the sweater. Super simple, you can do that. We're gonna move on to the armholes, and I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of break here, and I'm gonna have a pause, and we're gonna move into how to do or how to read the armhole instructions for your sweater, okay? Okay, so you've made the body of your sweater and it's time to move on to the armholes. So let's read those instructions. Right here in the armholes, it says shape armholes, and then it says a note, okay? You want to make sure that you work these armhole decreases 1 stitch in from the edge of the fabric that you're making. And it describes to you that you will be working single crochet 2 togethers and double crochet 2 togethers to make sure that you maintain that griddle stitch pattern. As long as you use those 2 decreases to maintain your pattern, you're going to be good to go. Simply follow the instructions. It's really that easy. If I look down here at the hand cam real quick, you can see that when I look at this little sample that I had made up, these are 2 pieces, this is the front and a back, that the armhole is just right here. It's super easily shaped. All it is, you turn and it says you slip stitch in the first X number of stitches, so that slip stitches in however many numbers that pertain to you. So for me, if this was a 2X, it would be 4 stitches. And then it says chain 2, and then you begin to do the half double crochet right there. And you continue on in the griddle stitch. And then you would work a decrease down here on the next row, okay? So I finished the whole row, did half double crochets, or I'm sorry, half double crochet, griddle stitch all the way down, and then a half double crochet in the next stitch, leaving the remaining stitches unworked. So by leaving these, ooh, I'm not even on camera and I'm showing you, huh? I'm sorry, guys. So if I'm at the other end here, I'm leaving these stitches right here unworked. And so these here, when I did those slip stitches to work across, it was just to get my yarn in the right place that I needed it to be, okay? So that is how easy this little armhole space is, right? When it comes to the next section, the decreased row, because we're working with such bulky yarn, we don't have a lot of shaping in our armholes. So unless you're making the 2 larger sizes, you don't have to do any more shaping. You don't have to do any more decreasing. But the instructions are written down there in case you have to do that, all right? It says, as you carry on, it says work in the griddle stitch pattern and with no decreases, so you don't do any more shaping, you guys. This is it. That little bit of portion, that little portion right there is the only shaping that we did. And it says you work until it measures X number of stitches, meaning, again, we've come up to where there's multiple numbers within the parentheses. So make sure you highlight the number that pertains to you, and you're going to work that number of inches. So for the 2X, I would have highlighted 8.5 inches. And from the bottom of my armhole, I would have measured up until it measures 8.5 inches, and I would end on a wrong side row. So my next row, I would begin on a right side, okay? The very last part, when we're working with the front and the back, because the front and the back are identical, okay, for this particular pattern. It says we're going to shape the shoulders and the neck. Now, I designed this to be a very simple neck opening. I didn't want a lot of drama going on. I wanted it something very simple. And I wanted the shoulders to likewise to be something very simple, and I didn't want to have a lot of brine damage when it came to trying to maintain the stitch pattern. So I decided to keep it in half double crochets. So when I get up here to the top, if I'm looking down here at my hands, I get up here to the top and I worked half double crochets over a set number of stitches, and then I placed a marker, okay? And then you would single crochet over the next number of stitches, which would count as the back of your neck, placed a marker, and then you half double crochet the remaining stitches. So you're like setting up your row. And by adding those markers, you're allowing yourself like a visual point for you to know, okay, from those points on, that's when I'm going to build my shoulders instead of going into the neck area. Make sense so far? Sweet. After you do that, you would turn your work and you would single crochet in the next 4 stitches and half double crochet to the marker. So if we look along here, if I were to turn this, you could see, actually it would be this side. I single crocheted right here up to this point, and then I half double crocheted all the way to my marker. So what that does is it allowed that half double crochets allowed for the highest shoulder point of my body. And so I didn't have to do any more crazy shaping. It naturally makes a wonderful shape for my shoulders. Okay. I hope that makes sense there. And the number of half double crochets and single crochets and whatnot are all listed right there in the pattern. As you carry on, you'll see that it says size small or extra large and small. You would finish off at that point. And that's what this size is here right now. Sizes medium through 3X only, it says there's more shoulder shaping to be done, okay? So you would carry on and work all the rest of the shoulder shaping rows just like you did that first one as following the instructions, okay? So that's it. That's how you do the whole back of the sweater, and that's how you do the whole front of the sweater. So now we have 2 pieces totally complete, where if you decided, you know what? Wham bam, I'm done. I don't need to do anything more. You've got yourself a really great vest. But if you want a serious pullover sweater to make this really super cute Xanadu pullover, you need to know how to make sleeves. So join me back here in just a minute. I'm going to take you through the instructions on how to crochet the sleeves, okay? Here we go. So we have a back and we have a front, and we decided that we don't want to make this just a vest. We want to add sleeves, but you've never made sleeves before. Don't worry, because the first time I ever made sleeves, when it was for my own design, I had never made sleeves before. So if I can do this, you can do this too, I promise. Sleeves are not that scary. As long as you follow the instructions and just make sure you do exactly what I tell you to do in the pattern, you can make some sleeves to fit the front and the back already, okay? So if I'm gonna go back to my pattern, and you know what, I know that I told you guys to print this out, which I totally want you to do. I am using my iPad today, and I'm scrolling through the pattern as I've downloaded it directly from redheart.com because it's easy for me to do that. Plus, you know what, we're also technologically savvy, even though I can't say it. Why not use my iPad? I know that there are programs out there that you can use highlighters and stuff and write directly onto the page, so why not use it? If that's the way you want to go, you absolutely can. So I'm looking at the instructions, and it says for the sleeves you have to make 2. Well, duh, right? You have to have 2, unless you want to go around and just be like, hey, you know, I'm too sexy for another sleeve. Starts out just like the front and the back begin. It says we need to chain a number of stitches. And again, we come across where we have a multiple of stitches into the parentheses. If I'm following along where I want to do my size, which would be a 2X, I'd want to pick the 5th number within the parentheses, which is 52, and I would make sure that I chain 52, okay? Then it says work setup row of the griddle stitch pattern, and then it gives me the number of stitches I'm going to have left over. Then I continue in the griddle stitch pattern until it measures 9 inches, ending on the wrong side row. Now you notice that 9 inches is for all the sizes. I left it at 9 inches because my inspiration piece for this had 3/4 inch or three-quarter sleeves, not 3/4 inch, 3/4 sleeves. And so I really feel like 9 inches is a really good length when it comes to 3/4 sleeves. But maybe you want long sleeves, you want nice bell-shaped sleeves, you want straight sleeves, you want short sleeves. You can adjust the length of this. This is where you would make this adjustment as well. Just like you might have adjusted the length of the body of your sweater, you can adjust the length of your sleeves. So if I look down here at the hand cam, you can see the 2 sleeves that I've already made. These little stitch markers right there, they're actually, it's just yarn attached to my sweaters to let me know that these are the front. So that's the front of that sweater, or front of that sleeve, and this is the front of that sleeve. But this here, that's my 9 inches. So that's the length of my sleeve. You can adjust that to fit your needs, okay? So if you decide you want it shorter, maybe you want it like that short. So maybe you only make it 5 inches, or maybe you want it just really super short. So you make it something like that, and you just make it 2.5, 3 inches. Maybe you want a kind of almost a cap sleeve, so you cut it all the way up to like there, right? You can make something super short. It's up to you. You do what you want to do. To carry on for the sleeves, I'm going to tuck this up and just pull this down so we can see what we're looking at here. It says that once you've reached the 9.5 inches, it's time to shape the sleeve cap. Now here's the cool part. Here at the beginning, over here where these little kind of wing parts come out, these wing parts, when it comes to making a sweater, they match up to the armholes on the back of the sweater, and you'll notice that they are made the same. So we have right here is the little part that sticks out of my sleeve cap. Here's the little part that sticks out of my sweater back. Okay, can you see that down here? Pretty easy. So they match up. The reason they match up is because when we put together the sleeve to the front and the back of the sweater, they fit together like a puzzle. So we need them to match up, okay? So you go ahead and you'll work the sleeve cap row, which is shaping this section right here. If you have a decrease row, you're going to begin doing any sort of decreases like you did before, but this is where we're going to start beginning to shape with this decrease row, okay, for the shaping of the cap. What happens is we want this shape of the sleeve cap to fit perfectly in our armhole. And to do that, we have to decrease down stitches until we get down to this many stitches, a very, very small amount, a small number of stitches, so that way we can put it directly into our sleeve. Once you've done the shaping here, and you've done shaping already, so you know how to do the single crochet 2 together or the double crochet 2 together, and you work those all the way down so that you have the stitches all the way decreased down. Once you have finished your sleeves, it's time to start seaming up your sweater. And after you've seamed up your sweater, that's when you can decide if you, maybe you still want the ribbing, so you add the ribbing on, so you make the ribbing and you add it on, or you've decided, you know what, the sweater's perfect the way it is, I don't want to do my ribbing. So we have walked through the entire pattern. It shouldn't be any sort of a surprise through the whole pattern. You know what to do. You know what to expect. There's a front, there's a back, there's 2 sleeves. You're good to go. So I'm hoping that you will download this pattern and attempt to make this simple sweater for yourself. As I said, this griddle stitch, which is also called the single double, is one of my favorite stitches. I think it adds a lot of texture and balance and beautiful symmetry to the whole garment. It's one of my favorite stitches, as I said. I also like it combined with this particular yarn with the long color changes, because I feel like it breaks it up a little bit and it really muddies and muddles all the colors as they meld together. I think it's a super pretty yarn and a great stitch combination, which is why I chose the two. So here's what I want you to do. Here's your mission if you choose to accept it. Go download the pattern, get the yarn, get the hook, and get started. I want you to make sure that you highlight all of the sizes that pertain to you and make up your sweater. Once you have all the pieces, like I do, so once you have these 4 pieces, not including the ribbing yet, because we will talk about the ribbing, I want you to come back here and watch the video on how to seam a sweater together. I'm going to show you how to seam the sweater shoulders, and then I'm going to show you how to set in the sleeves into the shoulder or into the armhole area, okay? So go get started. I'll see you back here when you have all of your pieces together. Until then, I will encourage you as best I can over on the Facebook page or over in Ravelry, or better yet, make sure you come back here and watch some more of my videos if you need some extra help. Thanks so much, and I hope this helped. Bye-bye.